I used to think my name meant disappointment in that house. Elena Martinez, daughter of Maria Martinez and nobody else. A girl raised on stories about fathers who leave and mothers who sacrifice everything to pick up the pieces. But when you're a child, you don't realize that some sacrifices are performed for an audience. Maria told everyone the same story. My father, Sergeant David Martinez, had walked out when I was 2 years old. Couldn't handle the responsibility of a family, she'd say with that practiced sigh. Left for a deployment and never came back. The women at church would nod knowingly, bringing casseroles and condolences like he had died instead of disappeared, but behind closed doors, the story had sharper edges. He was selfish, she'd tell me during her darker moments. Just like all men, they promise you forever and give you nothing but empty rooms and unpaid bills. I grew up believing I was the reason he left. Too much trouble, too much need, too much of everything that mattered. My older brother Carlos seemed to remember him differently. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at the single photo Mom kept on the mantle, Dad in his army uniform, young and smiling. But when I asked Carlos about memories, he'd just shrug and say, "You were too little to remember anyway." My younger sister, Sophia, never knew him at all. Born after he left, she called me lucky for having any memory at all, even if it was just abandonment. But I didn't remember him. I remembered the space where he should have been. Mom worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. She cleaned office buildings before dawn, watched Mrs. Henderson's kids after school, and stocked shelves at the grocery store on weekends. She wore her exhaustion like a badge of honor, proof of how hard she worked to make up for what he'd stolen from us. The apartment was always too small, too cold, too loud with the sound of bills being shuffled and reshuffled on the kitchen table. Carlos had the couch. Sophia and I shared a bed. Mom slept on an air mattress in the living room that she deflated every morning and stored behind the refrigerator. When people asked about my father, I learned to say, "It's just us." Mom taught me that. Simple, clean, final. Don't give them details to gossip about. Don't give them reasons to pity you more than they already do. At school, Father's Day meant making cards for grandfathers or uncles or anybody else who might fill the space. I always made mine for Mom. "Thanks for being both," I'd write in careful cursive. She'd hang them on the refrigerator for exactly 1 week, then they'd disappear into a drawer I wasn't supposed to open. By the time I turned 13, I'd learned to stop asking questions. Questions made Mom's mouth tighten and her eyes go distant. Questions made Carlos leave the room. Questions made Sophia look at me like I was picking at a wound that needed to heal. But Mrs. Chen from next door asked different kinds of questions. She'd moved in when I was 10, a retired postal worker with knowing eyes and a garden full of vegetables she shared freely. While Mom rushed between jobs, Mrs. Chen would sit with me on the front steps, teaching me to fold paper cranes and speaking in gentle questions that didn't feel like interrogations. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" she'd ask. Not "what can you be without a father," like the guidance counselor. Not "what should you be grateful for," like the church ladies. Just what I wanted. Mrs. Chen had pictures of her late husband everywhere in her apartment. She'd tell me stories about their courtship, their arguments, the way he sang off-key in the shower. Love stories, not cautionary tales. I began to wonder what those sounded like in real families. One afternoon when I was 15, helping Mrs. Chen sort through old magazines for the church donation drive, she stopped suddenly. Her hands went still on a bundle of envelopes held together with a rubber band. "Elena," she said carefully, "how long has your mother been getting mail for David Martinez?" I looked up from the magazine stack. "What do you mean?" She held up an envelope. The handwriting was unfamiliar but neat, masculine. The return address read, CTT, David Martinez, followed by an APO address I didn't recognize. "This was in my mailbox by mistake," she said. "The postal worker must have mixed up our addresses." "But Elena, this is postmarked last month." My heart stopped. "That's impossible. He left 15 years ago." Mrs. Chen's face went soft with something that looked like pity and anger mixed together. Sweetheart, I've been getting his mail by accident for years. I always walked it over to your mother. I thought you knew. The magazine slipped from my hands. What kind of mail? Letters, packages sometimes, always addressed to your family. The room felt smaller suddenly. Too warm. Show me, Mrs. Chen hesitated. Elena, maybe you should talk to your mother first. Show me, I said again, harder this time. She disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a showbox. Inside were envelopes, all addressed to our apartment, all with that same careful handwriting. Some were thick, like they contained photos. Others felt like they had small objects inside. The dates went back years, 5 years, 10 years, some of them recent enough that the ink still looked fresh. I don't understand, I whispered. Mrs. Chen sat beside me. The mail carrier told me your mother asked to have his mail forwarded somewhere else, but they kept coming to me by mistake. I always brought them over, but she never mentioned them to you. I stared at the box like it might explode. She said he abandoned us. Oh, sweetheart, that night I couldn't eat dinner, couldn't focus on homework, couldn't stop staring at Mom as she moved through her evening routine, folding laundry and sorting coupons and complaining about her back pain. Mom, I said finally, do we ever get mail from Dad? Her hand stopped moving. The towel she was folding hung limp in her grip. Why would you ask that? Mrs. Chen said she's been bringing mail over for years. The silence stretched long and thin. Carlos looked up from his textbook. Sophia stopped playing with her phone. That woman needs to mind her own business, Mom said. Finally, so it's true. Elena, don't what? Don't ask about my father? Don't wonder why he never tried to contact us? Because he didn't want to contact us. The towel flew across the room. He made his choice 15 years ago, but the letters are none of your business. That night, I heard her on the phone with someone, voice low and urgent. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was unmistakable. Damage control. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. Carlos and Sophia acted normal, but there was something careful in the way they avoided looking at me. Like I'd become dangerous overnight. Mrs. Chen was watering her tomatoes when I got home from school. She took one look at my face and gestured me over. Your mother came by this morning, she said. Asked me to mind my own business about the mail situation. What did you tell her? I told her that a child has a right to know if her father is trying to reach her. We stood there in her garden, surrounded by the smell of basil and growing things, and I felt something crack open inside me. Not anger exactly, more like hunger. Mrs. Chen, I said, if more letters come, will you keep them for me? She studied my face for a long moment. Then she nodded. 3 weeks later, she knocked on my bedroom window. I opened it to find her holding a thick envelope. This came today, she whispered. Your mother's not home. I took it with shaking hands. The return address was the same, but this time there was a phone number written below it. Inside was a letter, a photograph, and a check for $300 made out to me. The letter began, My dearest Elena, I know you probably think I abandoned you, but nothing could be further from the truth. I read standing at my window, one eye on the street, in case Mom's car appeared. His handwriting was careful, deliberate, like he'd taken time with each word. He wrote about deployments, about trying to send money that never seemed to reach us, about letters that went unanswered. He wrote about birthdays and Christmases and school plays he wished he could attend. He wrote about loving me from thousands of miles away and hoping someday I'd understand. The photograph was recent. Him in civilian clothes, older but unmistakably the same face from the mantel. He was standing next to a woman with kind eyes and 2 small children. On the back he'd written, Your stepmother Lisa and your half-siblings, Jake and Emma. They can't wait to meet their big sister. I stared at that photo until my eyes blurred. Somewhere out there, I had a father who remembered my birthday, a stepmother who knew my name, siblings who thought of me as family, not burden. That night, I called The number, he answered on the second ring. Hello? His voice was deeper than I'd imagined, rougher. Real, this is Elena, I said. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of 15 years of missed conversations, bedtime stories never told, hurt feelings on both sides of a lie. Too big to see around, Elena, he said finally, and his voice broke on my name. Oh, sweetheart, I've been trying to reach you for so long. We talked for 2 hours. He told me about the divorce papers he'd never signed, the custody agreement he'd never seen, about letters returned to sender and phone numbers that had been disconnected, about hiring lawyers who told him that sometimes mothers make it impossible for fathers to find their children. He told me about the new family he'd built, but how there was always a space at their table that belonged to me, about bedrooms in 3 different houses over the years, always ready in case I came home. I have money for your college, he said. I've been saving it, sending it, but if it never reached you, it never reached us, I said. Mom said you abandoned us, that you couldn't handle responsibility. Another long silence. Elena, I've sent over $40,000 in the last 10 years. Child support, birthday money, Christmas gifts. If you never got any of it, I closed my eyes. We've been poor, really poor. Mom works 3 jobs. Jesus, he whispered. What did she do with the money? I didn't have an answer for that, but I was starting to have suspicions. When Mom came home that night, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a letter, the photograph, and a printed bank statement Mrs. Chen had helped me request online. It showed 15 years of deposits from David Martinez into an account under my mother's name. She saw the papers and went pale. Elena, let me explain. Explain what? That you've been lying to me my entire life? That you've been stealing money meant for me and Carlos and Sophia? I wasn't stealing. I was protecting you. From what? From having a father who loves me. She sat down heavily, suddenly looking older than her 45 years. From being disappointed again. From building hope just to have it crushed. That wasn't your choice to make. I'm your mother. Everything about you is my choice. Not anymore. I stood up, gathering the papers. I'm 18 next month, and when I am, I'm going to see him. Elena, please. You don't understand what he put us through. No, Mom. I understand what you put us through. You let us believe we weren't worth coming back for. You let me believe I was the reason he left. Her face crumpled. I did it for you. To protect you from more abandonment. He never abandoned us. You hid us from him. The truth sat between us like a living thing, too big for the small apartment, too heavy for the flimsy furniture. Carlos appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. What's going on? I handed him the letter, watched his face change as he read, watched 15 years of resentment reshape itself into something else. Carlos, I said gently, do you remember Dad leaving? He looked up from the letter, eyes wet. No, I remember him deploying. I remember Mom crying a lot, but I don't remember him leaving, because he didn't leave. She hid us. Sophia emerged from our bedroom, drawn by the tension. When I explained everything, she didn't cry. She just looked at Mom with something close to betrayal. So we have a dad? She asked. We have a dad. That night, Mom tried one more time. She came to my bed after Sophia fell asleep. Elena, please don't do this. Don't tear our family apart. I'm not tearing it apart, I said. I'm putting it back together. What if he disappoints you? What if he's changed? What if his new family doesn't want you around? I looked at her in the dim light from the street lamp outside our window. Then I'll deal with it. But at least I'll know the truth. I am your truth, she whispered. No, Mom, you were my lie. The next morning, I called Dad back. We made plans. He would fly out. The following weekend, we would meet at a restaurant, neutral ground, just to see each other face to face. Elena, he said before we hung up, I want you to know, you can stay here if you want. You and Carlos and Sophia. There's room. What about Mom? Long pause. Your mother made her choices. Now you get to make yours. When I told Mrs. Chen about the plan, she cried. Happy tears, she said, dabbing at her eyes with a dish towel. I'm proud of you, she said. It takes courage to reclaim your story. Thank you for keeping the letters, for helping me see the truth. Sometimes the truth needs a witness, she said. I'm honored to have been yours. The day Dad arrived, I stood in the restaurant parking lot for 10 minutes, too nervous to go inside. When I finally walked through the doors, I saw him immediately. He was sitting at a corner table, wearing a button-down shirt and jeans, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. He stood when he saw me. We looked at each other across the restaurant, 15 years of separation dissolving in an instant. Elena, his voice was tentative, hopeful. I walked toward him, each step feeling like coming home. When we hugged, he smelled like soap and coffee and something indefinably safe. He held me like he was afraid I might disappear again. I'm so sorry, he whispered into my hair. I should have fought harder to find you. You found me, I said. That's what matters. We talked for hours. About his deployments, his new family, his regrets, about my childhood, my dreams, my plans for college, about all the lost time and how we might begin to fill it. When he asked about Carlos and Sofia, I told him they wanted to meet him too, that they were scared but curious, that we all needed time to adjust to a truth that changed everything we thought we knew about ourselves. And your mother? He asked carefully. I don't know. She's angry, scared. I think she's afraid you'll take us away from her. I don't want to take anything from anyone, he said. I just want to be part of your lives again, in whatever way feels right. 6 months later, Carlos joined the army. He said he wanted to understand the man who'd raised him from a distance, through letters and longing. Dad cried when Carlos called him for advice about basic training. Sofia spends summers with Dad and Lisa now. She comes back with stories about her little brother and sister, about family barbecues and bedtime stories and all the ordinary magic of being wanted. Mom and I still live in the same apartment, but everything between us is different. She's in therapy now, trying to understand why she chose secrets over truth, fear over faith. Some days are better than others. I thought I was protecting you, she said recently, sitting at the same kitchen table where I'd confronted her with the evidence. I know you did, but protection isn't the same as love. I do love you, Elena. More than you know, I believe you. But love without trust isn't really love. It's just me dressed up in prettier clothes. Last month, Dad walked me down the aisle. At my college graduation, Mom was in the audience, crying behind her sunglasses. Carlos was there in his dress uniform. Sofia cheered so loud the dean looked startled. After the ceremony, we all went to dinner. Not together, not yet. That's still too complicated. But in the same restaurant, at tables close enough to wave across the space, Mrs. Chen gave me a card that day. Inside, she'd written, sometimes the most important letters are the ones that never get delivered. But love finds a way. I kept Dad's letters, all of them. They're in a box under my bed now, next to acceptance letters to graduate school and photographs of the family I thought I'd lost but had really just misplaced. The money Mom had hidden went toward my education, as Dad had always intended. There was enough for Carlos and Sofia too, college funds built from 15 years of love they'd been told didn't exist. Some nights, I still wonder what our lives would have looked like if Mom had chosen differently, if she'd let love be bigger than her fear, if she trusted us with the truth from the beginning. But I've learned that wondering about different stories doesn't change the one you're living. It just keeps you from writing the next chapter. My name means bright light in Greek. Dad told me that. He said he and Mom chose it because I was the light that made their love visible. I'm still that light. But now I know I don't have to hide under anyone's shadow to shine. Some stories begin in darkness. Mine began with a letter that found its way home despite everything designed to keep it lost.